My name's Shetty. I'm an online presenter, host and producer and former monk. Today I'm here in this beautiful library talking about creating opportunity. I'm really excited to talk to you about this, and I really wanted to start off by talking about this quote that we all hear. Press the like button if you heard this quote before. We've all heard the quote, "Good things come to those who wait." Maybe your father said it to you, maybe your mother said it to you, maybe your uncle or auntie or your friend, or maybe your teacher said it to you, right? Good things come to those who wait. I want you to tell me what you think of that quote. Has that principle worked for you? Has that in life made any difference, right? I want to hear your views. So in the comment section, just type away, let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you think of that advice, that piece of advice, that good things come to those who wait, because today we're talking about creating opportunities. So actually, I want to change that. My opinion on that quote is that we need to change that from good things come to those who wait to good things come to those who create. The people that actually create their own opportunities, the people that take responsibility and ownership to make a difference in their life and the lives of other people. And as we've been building this global conscious community, I know so many of you have stimulating ideas about how you're going to bring about change. We often think that creating opportunity means it has to be rushed or hurried, or it means you have to have lots of stuff going on. And sometimes that can get quite draining. It can get quite overwhelming. It can start to feel as if we don't know how we're going to move forward. But what I notice now is that we need to balance that theory with the value of creating opportunities. There's a great quote by a Roman philosopher named Seneca, where he said that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity, right? That's what happens when preparation meets opportunity, something that we don't really have a lot of talked about today. And I was thinking about, I used to have an economics teacher, and this economics teacher, I remember the first day he walked into school. He walked into school, I believe we had whiteboards by that time, I'm not that old. He had whiteboard, and on the whiteboard he wrote down, he goes, "Failing to prepare is preparing to fail." And I remember all of us just bursting out laughing, and we just thought, oh my God, is he a philosopher or an economics teacher, right? He wrote, "Failing to prepare is preparing to fail." He wrote that down on the board. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going, oh my God, another one of these philosophers, because I wasn't even into philosophy myself. And when he wrote that down, now when I look back and I think, wow, that was such a powerful statement. That was so true. So Seneca, Roman philosopher, says the same thing. He says, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, how do we create opportunity in our life? When we're trying to develop patience within ourselves, you'll find that when you're working to your purpose, when you're working in a connected way, when you're working in the direction where you feel focus, you'll naturally develop patience. We often feel we don't have patience when things aren't working out, and things usually don't work out when we're not working in a way that works for us. One of the things that I wanted to speak to you about, talking about that, is the ability to really understand times at which when we need to make things almost difficult again. Now, I don't want you to invite difficulties into your life. That's not what I'm recommending. But hear me out for a second. What I'm trying to say is that often you have to go back to feeling like you have nothing, so that you can create something again. A great example of this was actually Elon Musk, and I don't know how many of you have read his autobiography. It's absolutely phenomenal, biography. And he talked about that when he sold PayPal, his earnings were 180 million. Now he split that straight away. I think in a matter of about 3 months, he put 100 million into SpaceX, he put 70 million into Tesla, and he put 10 million into SolarCity. If you add that all up, if you're quick at maths, and you've probably done it already, that's 180 million already gone, right? He said that he was struggling to pay rent, right? He had to borrow money to pay rent. The guy's a millionaire. Why did he do that? He says that he had to feel that desperation again, that ability to want to make a change. He had to relive that. You can create opportunity in your life. If you're someone who thinks maybe it's your business, maybe it's in your relationships, maybe it's at work, wherever it is, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to grow your career, wherever you are, we all need to create opportunities. How can we do that? How do we all take that leap of faith? So you're somewhere, you're okay with where you're at. You're probably saying okay with where you're at. You're comfortable with it. But you know that there's more out there for you. How do you take that leap of faith? One of the ways that I believe we take that leap of faith is actually launch something new, then talk about it, rather than the other way around. Often what we do is we spend a lot of our time talking about doing something and we never get around to actually making it happen. But actually what I recommend is just start doing something small. I love talking about Facebook. When Facebook first launched, it was only meant to be for Harvard, right? Mark Zuckerberg made it. It worked for Harvard. It then branched out to the Ivy League universities in the States. It then branched out over to Cambridge and Oxford and the top universities and institutions in England. And then I believe across the world. But notice that it's a testing period. And you see loads of tech firms do this brilliantly today. They're experts at starting small and scaling up. So my main recommendation is start small. Do not try and start big, and really think about how you can launch something and then talk about it. Don't start talking about something first. Usually when you throw out an idea, if you get criticism for it straight away, you're less likely to see it through. How many of you have ever seen an article on a new app, a new book, a new idea, and you go, oh my God, I had the idea like 2 years ago? How many of you ever felt that way, right? I've been in that camp, right? My hand's right up. Put your virtual hands up if that's one of you. It happens to all of us all the time. You see a new launch of a restaurant, you see a new launch of a product, and you say, but I had that idea, I came up with that. The funny thing is, if you came up with that idea 2 years ago, it means someone started working on it 4 years ago. Notice it's the people who start acting quicker, they're the ones who grow quicker. So kids don't do what you say, they do as you do, the way we behave. So if children see us being impatient all the time, they're naturally going to be impatient. I'm not saying any of you are impatient, but it's definitely possible that it works that way. I was talking with a monk about 3 years ago, and I was having this conversation and this dialogue about being extremely ambitious, wanting to make lots of things happen. And I said, how do you know where to put your energy? And he gave me a phenomenal response. And his response was that you should keep all your doors open. And he said, in life, naturally doors will start to close. Walk through the ones that stay open. Our biggest challenge in life is often we don't create enough options and opportunities. We feel like there's one path. I remember at one point, and I really recommend doing this, I made a list of everyone I admired in life, right? I made a list of names. I then went on Wikipedia. I know it's not the best place, but that's the place I started. I researched every single person's life story. I researched their journey. I researched how they got to where they were. The amazing thing, there's no formula. The formula is that there's complete inconsistency. It's not that there was just one route. So recognize, realize, and embrace the fact that there's multiple routes to the same place you want to be. So one of our biggest challenges is feeling that there's only one way, there's only one opportunity, there's only one path. But that's actually, there couldn't be anything more untrue. And so I've been going along with this theme of break up with the idea that there's only one path to where you want to be, right? Break up with the idea that there's only one thing. It's definitely not the way. There can be multiple paths to where you want to be. So how do you know which opportunities to choose between? Start with 3. Start with 5, start with 7, notice the ones that are losing momentum and start putting effort into the ones that are gaining momentum. Start with your talents. One of the things that we make a mistake on all the time is we don't start with our talents. Use your talents more. Find opportunities that allow you to be yourself and express yourself more. When you start engaging your natural talents, things will start to happen. People who create opportunities are able to see opportunities everywhere, not see problems or criticism. So our mind has this natural tendency where we sometimes, when we see things, we can see what's wrong with it. If you want to be someone who creates opportunities in life, instead of looking at something and seeing what's wrong with it, start thinking about how you'd solve that problem in everything in life. If you're walking around, I sometimes do this and I see massive billboards and I think, well, if I was selling that product, I'd think about it like this. I'd rename or retitle or rebrand it to look in this way. And then sometimes I'll look at something else. I'll look at an app or I'll look at a new piece of technology or software and I'll look at that and I'll go, wait a minute, that doesn't quite fit, but it's easy. Anyone can spot something that's wrong, right? We all know that. It doesn't take a genius to spot a problem in the subway system or in a meal or a restaurant. It doesn't take a genius. But what we need to do is start creating opportunity by training our mind to actually do that habitually. So try and create that habit for yourself where anything you see, don't try and think of what's wrong about it. Think of how you would solve it. Now, I'm not expecting you to go out there and learn lots of new skills and start fixing everything you see that's broken. But it's just training our mind, getting our mind into that habit, that evolution of approaching challenges in that way. I find that we have this desire or this search where we're always trying to say, do we do this or that? actually we need to embrace polarities. We need to embrace both. We need to try and figure out and try what works for you. So I would say start with both and see which is working for you. Keep that habit up, test it, experiment with it, right? Don't ever lose the experiment of life that could work for you. First thing to understand is that the only thing that's consistent is change. So unpredictability is actually the norm that we expose ourselves to on a day-to-day basis. We all know that, right? There's no guarantee of how the day is going to go. There's no guarantee of how things are going to work. That creates tons of anxiety, right? We always want to know what's happening at what time. So that creates tons of anxiety. So the only way to monitor that is, first of all, just accept that things aren't always going to work the way we want them to work. The second thing, in terms of patience, is start working and giving your energies to the things that are moving, the things that do have momentum, the things that are working. They are there. We've just stopped noticing. And therefore, one of the biggest ways to become a person who creates opportunities on a daily basis is the ability to notice and observe. Notice the people that are helping you, right? There's a great story I like to tell about a gentleman whose name is free from my mind at the moment, but I'm sure Charles Plum, that's his name's Charles Plum. And Charles Plum, he used to be a fighter pilot during the time of the war. Now, when he was a fighter pilot, every day people would pack his parachute, people would pack his lunch, people would arm the air, people checked that the aeroplane was fine, people checked that the fighter jet had ammunition. He'd have so many people around him. He was one of the best fighter pilots. Many years on, in recent times, he was at a restaurant with his wife. And this gentleman came up to him and said, "Oh, you're Charles Plum, right?" He recognized him. You know when you recognize someone even when you haven't seen them in a long time? So Charles Plum recognized him and he said, this gentleman recognized Charles Plum. And he said, "You're Charles Plum." And Charles Plum said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Oh, I remember you." And Charles Plum said, "Oh, I don't remember you." And you know when you do that thing, when you start scanning through faces in your mind, trying to recall this person that you don't recognize at all. And so Charles Plum started scanning faces in his mind and he couldn't recall or put something, it's kind of like you wish you had what Google Glass was meant to be, or you kind of wish you had what the Terminator has, where you can just scan people's names and details and it all appears. So he couldn't do that. And he said, "Sorry, I don't recognize you. I'm really sorry," in a genuine way. He said, "I don't recognize you." And the man said, "I used to pack your parachute." He said, "I used to pack your parachute." And Charles Plum said, "Wow." So he started to think of every person and he said, "Do you know what? I can't remember anyone who packed my parachute." That night he went home and he was thinking about this, how he couldn't remember the person who packed his parachute. The amazing thing was, he then remembered that on his last flight, he was saved because he jumped out of his aircraft that was exploding. He jumped out and he was saved by the parachute. And he thought for a second, he thought, wow, basically, I don't even know the person who saved my life. And he went back and now he's talking all across the world and he's talking about this. Remember the person who packs your parachute, right? One of our biggest challenges to your question, going back to your question, is what should we do in the context of patience? When things are out of control, focus on the things where people are investing in you. Right, focus on the people that are making a difference in your life. We're so oblivious to the fact that there are countless people who are investing in your growth. Opportunity come to you and you're not ready. I remember a piece of advice from Richard Branson. Now, he didn't give it to me personally, even though I like to think that he did. I may hear his voice in my head when I think it through, but he said this brilliant statement. He said that when you get an opportunity you think you're not ready for, say yes and then figure out how to do it. And I remember reading that when I was 18 years old and I thought, wow, that's genius. I'm going to try that out. I'm going to experiment with that statement. Now, that statement's got me into a lot of trouble sometimes, but most of the time it's worked. Why? Because when I said yes to an opportunity I didn't feel I was ready for, I then had the incentive and the catalyst to go out there and study, learn, build, grow. Whereas when I waited to be ready for an opportunity, I never had the push to grow. Hence, going back to that place, we sometimes need to go back to feeling like we have nothing to then feel like we have an energy to go out and achieve something again. You've got to put yourself in that mindset. So actually what I'd say to that is, don't ever feel that you're not ready. Even if you are, say you are, and then go and learn how to do it. Don't let the opportunity pass. Now, in the case that you've already let it pass, don't worry, just change your tack next time. It's as simple as that. So I did a session a couple of weeks ago, which was all about thriving in our element. See, it's always important to find your nature in work. So if you're in a workspace, find what you're going to thrive at and work towards it. So sometimes you're going to be in an environment or in a job or in a career, whatever it is, that doesn't fit your natural skill set. That isn't the natural space for you. So go and find the things in that environment that fit for you. It's kind of like, I mean, I'm going to give you my example. So I've just moved to New York. Yesterday I was going out for lunch. I had to find someone that I knew the area well, right? My friend Stephanie at work, I had to ask her, and she knew a great place we could go and eat. Now, the best way to do that was I had to find something that I liked by sharing with someone what I liked eating. Why don't we apply that to life by sharing what we like doing with people close to us, by sharing what our expertise and talents are? That person or that environment can then help us live that in that way. So sometimes you have to do a bit of molding to your environment, and sometimes your environment will mold itself towards you. The point is not either or, the point is try both out. But the key thing there is always work to your strengths. Go all in. Think about what is it that you can totally commit to. Now, it won't be easy to do, and that may not turn up tomorrow. So go with the closest thing at the time. I guarantee you'll learn a lot more from it. I just shared something on Twitter just before I came inside, and I believe it's a famous startup quote. I can't remember who by, but the principle is that if you're waiting for your app or product to be perfect, you've already waited too long, right? It's that feeling that if you're waiting for something to be perfect, you're a perfectionist getting it right, it's already too late to launch. So the idea is that everything we do, we want to do it with a certain level of finesse. We want to do it with a certain level of expertise, with a certain level of focus. And it's focus that should be our aim, not perfection. When perfection becomes our aim, it almost constricts us and acts like a prison that surrounds us and actually limits us from acting, because perfection is so hard. So instead of your aim being perfection, make your aim focus. Make your aim exclusive devotion, dedication, and focus on the art, as opposed to perfection of the result. The result is always beyond us, but the perfection of the art or the focus of the art is something you can aim for. So I really recommend going on a time management course. It's that simple. We have to invest. If we want to change your ability to manage time, it's something that needs to be invested in. So one of my key tips, it's a very simple framework. It's the old school urgent, important framework. It's really important to recognize in your life what's urgent, what's important, what's both, and what's not. So just creating a matrix, just being able to divide things according to that will allow you to plan your day better. I always recommend that you plan your day the night before. You plan your week at the beginning of the week on a Sunday, right? The beginning of the week is Sunday, not Monday. I know some calendars get that right, some calendars get that wrong. But if you want to have a successful week, you need to be planning it the day before the week starts. A lot of people, we all worry about the first step, and funnily enough, the first step has to be a bit of a step in the dark. It's kind of like you've got to get your feet wet. You've got to be open to not getting it right. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. And that's why I'd say the quicker you can do that, one of the best ways is to do it with someone, right? When you can take someone along with you, and they're going to make a fool out of themselves too, or it's not going to go quite as planned, but you can share that experience with someone. That's one of the quickest ways as to make that first step towards a new opportunity. Do it with someone that you trust. Experience that with someone together, right? That's one of the best ways of doing it. And I would really encourage you to start becoming what I like to call connected thinkers. I would spend, if you can, 1 day a week, and if you can't do 1 day a week, 1 hour a week, just speaking to people, right? Just engaging with people that you think inspire you, people that you think are doing something interesting, even tuning in here, right? It's just giving yourself something daily, something weekly that allows you to open up your mind to things that you wouldn't usually hear about. So that ability to network, that ability to open your brain is definitely something that I recommend. How many of you have a challenge saying yes? I'm sure some of you saw a movie a few years ago called The Yes Man, and if you've ever tried that, it can be a lot of fun, but it can also be quite overwhelming and overbearing. So it's the balance of knowing what to say yes to, what to no to. What I usually recommend is start by saying yes to a lot of stuff, then start sifting out the stuff that you don't want to focus on. It almost starts, we all go through that journey. If you look at the journey of anyone who's created opportunities, they'll tell you at the start, they just said yes to everything. And then as time went on, they realized they were overwhelmed. They went through that process that we all go through of saying, oh God, I've said yes, there's too many things. And then you start taking out the stuff, weeding out the stuff that doesn't warrant the investment, that doesn't really justify the amount of time you are giving into that item. Because we're only seeing one route. When we're having tunnel vision, when we're feeling that there's only one location, there's only one method, there's only one direction, that's usually what creates that frustration and annoyance. Whereas when we look at something, go, okay, and I'll give you an example. So I have a young nephew, I hope he's watching, he's super cute, one of the cutest kids I've ever seen, if I don't say so myself. But the great thing about him is, now when he learned to crawl, at first he'd love to crawl to you and crawl on top of you and you know, walk around with you, etc. But then after a while, what he started to do is, if you stood in his way and he got more confident, he'd find another way around you. He'd walk around you, he'd walk all over you, he'd walk under you. He'd just be trying to find another way to get to the part of the room he wasn't allowed to go to. And I thought, wow, like as a child, as children, all of us have been that, right? It's not like that's a kid and it's alien. We've all been there. And that kid has that ability, that child has that ability to completely feel like there's nothing impossible, there's no possibility, there's limitless opportunity and possibility to get to the place where they want to get to. Whereas as we grow older, we kind of narrow ourselves down into this tunnel vision of believing there's only one way. So that annoyance or frustration comes when we don't look at other alternatives, when we don't look at other options, right? How many of us feel like that our potential, our talents are not being tapped into? You know what the funniest thing is that we can wait a long time to find the people that will tap into our potential, or we can create opportunities for demonstrating that potential. And I noticed that the people that succeed, the people that flourish, the people that thrive, they're the individuals who actually create those opportunities where they can demonstrate their potential. Often our potential is just hidden away, and people are so busy trying to excavate their own potential and create their own opportunities, they don't have time for us. So yes, it would be beautiful if all leaders in the world, and I definitely want to talk to, I'm going to be bringing some leadership experts in to actually have this interview conversation with them. I'm quite interested in how we can create a breed of leaders who are expert at finding talent quicker, better, faster, more effectively. But until that happens, until we create that, which I'd love to be a part of, until we do that, it's significant that we don't wait for people to tap into our potential. We tap into ourselves and demonstrate it. So I can only recommend to you, Divya, to actually don't wait for that to happen, right? Go out there, find opportunities to demonstrate that. How do you know what is your calling in a place of so much opportunity? Again, I bring it back to a principle I like to talk about called experiment like a scientist, all right? It's scientists don't know what the right answer is. It's not like the first time they do a test that it reacts in the right way. It's not the first time that they do an experiment they get the solution they want, but you experiment like a scientist. You experiment with the calling that seems closest. If that doesn't work, you learn from it and then experiment with the next one, right? It's never limiting the amount of experiments. In terms of prioritizing your tasks, I mean, you probably have stuff that's assignments, objectives, results-led. I would say that you should be spending, I will say one thing, it's natural at work to spend 75% or 80% of your time investing in what your actual work is. What I recommend is that you take out 25% of your time a week, 20% a week, 10% a week to focus on personal projects, focus on personal ideas. I love this. I was at Google offices in London some time ago, and they showed me, they took me up to this roof, and on the top of the Google roof, it was just covered in plots of people planting stuff. And it was just full of people planting seeds and flowers and plants and vegetables and all this kind of different things. Now, I was bemused because I was just like, why is this on top of a random garden in London, especially when the weather's terrible all the time? Like, what's the point of this? And so the senior manager that I was with, he explained that the reason why they have this is so that people can come up here, take part in the process of planting seeds, gardening, taking part in that process, and that they would connect with people that they didn't work with. So everyone's segment, everyone's piece of land would be different to the area which they worked in inside the company. So they were able to network, break down boundaries, create a borderless world, a borderless organization where people from different areas, from sales to media to tech to developers to video to presenters, whatever it was, would find a space that they could connect. So we need to find 25% of our life, that opportunity to give us that time. Opportunity isn't selfish, right? Opportunity isn't about you, it's about a win-win situation. And this change in mindset totally radicalized my view of what creating opportunities meant. Growing up, I always felt creating opportunities meant getting something for myself. It meant personal gain. It meant personal growth. And I often never thought about the other person. I often never thought about how my behavior, my activities, my network could potentially benefit another individual. And I learned that by watching people in this space, people who always think win-win, people who think a giver's mindset. They don't go to someone expecting something, they go to someone thinking they can give and offer something. And when that person recognizes that that's of value to them, they're more naturally inclined to want to support. And this is something that we miss today. We miss today in society, in a world where we're constantly thinking of ourselves. We talk about self-development, but selfless development is as important in our own journey as is self-development. So I would definitely point out that factor, that think about your skills, think about your talents, think about your networks, think about people that you know, and think about how the people you want to work with, the people you want to connect with, could actually benefit. Because I guarantee you, when you do that, the switch in their mind will also go to that factor of, oh, how can I benefit as well, right? How can I make a benefit or an impact in that person's life? So please start thinking win-win. When you think of opportunities for others, it will simply create more opportunities for you. I tell so many stories in some of the videos that I produce, which I know many of you have watched. We are constantly facing rejections. I talk about J.K. Rowling, 12 rejections from 12 publishers. You look at Sylvester Stallone, the Rocky saga, which is now at movie number 6 with Creed, right? It's like, you look at that, he was rejected by 99 producers for his concept of Rocky. Now, some of you may agree and say that was a good idea. I'm a massive Rocky fan, so I disagree. But the point is 99 rejections. There are multiple rejections constantly for anyone who has succeeded. You talk about Michael Jordan, right, in the game of basketball. You look at the amount of failures he talks about. I think he's missed like 2,000 shots, match-winning shots that he was meant to take. And you think, what? How did he do that? Like, really? I've only seen when he scores. And that's the funny thing, that we only talk about failures after people succeed. And therefore, what happens is that failing becomes a taboo, and we don't talk about it in society as much as we could. We don't talk about it. When we fail, we don't tell our friend. We only tell our friend when we succeed. So I'm not saying that now you go on Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat and start sharing all your failures. But what I am saying is recognizing that failure has been an integral part in the journey and success of any individual, anyone, right? Whether they're externally successful today, whether you've seen them succeed, whether you haven't, I guarantee you, when you study their life, you'll see countless failures in their journey. So please go and study it. And that's why we have to observe and study the lives of successful people in order to follow in those footsteps. So definitely take a look at that. We all have bosses that don't like us. We all go through that process where we have managers, people leading us that stress us out. The amazing thing is that doing what you love is actually reducing stress. So if you love your job, which you said here, Juliana, you love your job, you enjoy it. Believe me, if that wasn't the case, that level of stress would be heightened. And that level of stress would be much harder to deal with. So to change around what you're doing that you already enjoy and you love, to remove the stress of another person, is probably not the right direction to go in. I wouldn't recommend that. But what I would recommend is either changing spaces of work, changing which area of the business you're functioning in, or if you haven't done this already, having a frank conversation with that individual, creating a broader council, a broader structure of managers around you who do understand you, right? We've all been in that situation where we're challenged by individuals. The challenge that faces us all when we get to a space of comfort and contentment is that we have to go back to feeling like we have nothing. I'm not saying we have to go back to being like we have nothing. We've got to go back to feeling like we have nothing. The reason why I did this conversation today, I was thinking about it. When I left the office yesterday, when I left the studio, I was thinking about this. I was thinking, we've got to constantly remind ourselves of what hustle it took to get to where we are, what work it took to get to where we are, what sacrifice it took to get to where you are. And often they say that what got you here won't get you there. But again, I don't totally agree with that. I think that's partly true. But the other side is that actually what got you here is going to help you go further. If that philosophy worked for you, we all have a philosophy of life. We all have a karma of life that works for us. And if we ignore that and go against it, it's likely that that won't happen. I think I was saying in a session that I did on decisions, I was saying that some of the best decisions in my life have been massive risks against the grain and everyone thought it was a bad idea, right? And so I've stuck to that. That karma works for me. So it's about identifying. The first thing is identification. Often we leave a bad situation for something that's only slightly better because it solves our experience in the temporary phase, and that only leads to more issues. So it's better for us to sit down, take some time out, try out the 16personalities.com test on identifying your strengths, identifying what works for you. Start with that as step one. Second thing is start building that on top of what you're already doing. If it's a new skill, start focusing on being in those spaces where those people employ, where those people are present, where you can connect with people. I would really start by talking to people who already do the jobs you think you love. And I go back to think you love because often when you do that job or you speak to people who are doing it and they explain their experience or express their experience, they'll actually be really open and tell you this is what it's like, and you'll be like, oh wow, that's not how I imagined it at all. I didn't see that that's what I'd be doing day to day. So second thing I recommend is after finding out your strengths, speak to people in those roles that you think may be right for you and figure out if they actually are. Third thing is network, be in those spaces, talk to people, try and get yourself in as you have done before. The amazing thing today is that the online world, there's meetups, there's live face-to-face. If you feel you're better in person, there's meetups. You can find them online, visit them in person, right? There's so many like coffee houses, right? Old platform, new way of doing them. And if you prefer actually being connected with people online, well, we've got all of these online networks. It's so important that all of us learn the value of connecting with individuals online. And today, everything's human to human, whether it's B2B, whether it's B2C, people want to connect with people. So expressing what you're doing, right? Share what you do and do what you share. It's so important. When you share what you do, you connect with people that want to do that too. And do what you share, actually genuinely live up to it, actually make it happen. I want to go back and remind us that the Roman philosopher Seneca said, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. I remember one thing that I'm going to leave you with, one thing I used to do. I used to say to myself, if I was in this ideal situation that I really want, how would I behave? I would plan my behavior before I'd even been given the opportunity. Then when the opportunity came, you nailed it, right? So I hope you'll be able to do that. Give a like on my Facebook page at JShettyIW, where I share lots of motivational stuff daily. Give a like to the HuffPost Rise Facebook page. Take care and keep talking, keep typing, and keep speaking to each other. Thanks so much. Take care, guys.